Okay, this is Lisa Rudley, and I'd like to call to order the March 25th, 2020 board meeting. Okay, I'll lead us.
How nice.
Okay, and we're now remote. And Illy, if you would share the American flag, and I'd like everybody to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody, please, if you can, stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
of the
United
United States of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to, before we go into the budget presentation, Dr. Sanchez, Carrie Ann Sipos, and Brian Alm will, and I think we're still waiting for Alita. I just realized Alita's not in yet, but we'll start with an update from Dr. Sanchez. And I just want to start off by thanking everybody in our cabinet, on the call, and all of our faculty for the Herculean efforts that everybody has put into the last couple of weeks and everything that they do all year long. It's just been tremendous coordination and effort to help out our Ossining families as well as balancing their own families. So I just want to start off by saying thank you so much from all of us on the Board of Education and from the Ossining community. And with that, I will pass it over to Dr. Sanchez.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to echo the thank yous. Just wanted to provide you an update regarding our work and how we're adjusting as a result of the impact of the coronavirus on Ossining, but obviously it's having an impact across the state. And so I start with gratitude. I want to just thank everyone from the Board of Education to our staff, to our families, community members, and our students for all their work. Everyone's had to adjust, care for each other, and at the same time provide services in a different way. And I think we've come a long way. There's still adjustments we're making to support families and students and staff, and we'll continue to do that as we proceed. But our buildings and ground staff has been exceptional. Our clerical, our administrators continue to adapt. Our food service, our volunteers. Just today, they served about 180 families through Feeding Westchester, where we've always had that partnership. But that's the largest number that we've had in terms of distribution, and many, many more. And our staff has started to adjust with their virtual work in meeting the needs of students. And more to come. So I just thought I'd give the cabinet members an opportunity to kind of share a little bit from what's happening from an educational plan perspective, our food services, some of the resources that we have, safety measures we're taking, and then just briefly on the school calendar. So I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Ann, start maybe a little bit with elementary, and then turn over to Brian to speak about secondary.
Okay, so I want to thank you everyone for their support. And I just have to also thank my dear friend, Dr. Alm, and my dear friend, Dr. Sanchez, and Alita Zuber in the cabinet. It's been amazing to be surrounded by such professionals and such caring humans. So thank you. I want to go line by line because it's important for you to hear everything that I think that we've been doing. So as we all know, the elementary crowd put together a 2-week plan for distance learning when we were first informed, right, that we were going to be out for 2 weeks. And that started with the coaches who framed out the learning and started the planning process. They created the ideas for 2 weeks to get teachers started because we had such short notice. Teachers were then brought into the process to review the plans and to revise them and what we call enhance them. And they started to populate the plans with all kinds of other resources. We used that superintendent conference day to really roll up our sleeves together, all the staff, principals, just to be sure that we had 2 weeks worth of work, thinking we were coming back. Self-contained special education teachers were given time to plan and to prepare for their children. All principals and all hands-on personnel in every building worked diligently to make copies because we were very fearful that not every child was going to have a device. So we worked very hard to be sure we had paper pencil going out to. We were trying to communicate and get everything into everyone's hands in all different forms. Because we were worried that not everyone was going to have access to our push out emails where we were communicating the expectations. And so even up to today, you should know that the principals are continuing to try to get those kind of hands-on things to kids. Parents are still reaching out who were not able to get it because when we handed them out in school, there were some kids that were absent. So we're working really hard to continue to be sure kids have what they need. It's important to recognize that fifth grade has always been a one-to-one building. So every child has a device there and they're on Google Classroom there. So our kids there were able to take home their devices, and they're working a bit differently than our K through 4 kids. So now we know we're not coming, we won't be back. So we're planning what we're calling phase 2 of this work. And it's very clear to us that our plans need to include new ways to communicate with families and with students. We've done a needs assessment in Park, Brookside, and Claremont around devices and Wi-Fi, and we are preparing to do another level of distribution come this Friday for those families that need computers in our lower grades and need help accessing free Wi-Fi in the community. And while we're really uncertain of how long we'll be out, our plans are underway. Again, it started, the coaches are framing out, again, some ideas for 2 more weeks. And they're working with principals, the coaches, principals, and some math teacher leaders are getting things going. Teachers will be brought in soon to jump into this work and to make the work their own, but at least we'll have in their hands something to start with. And hopefully we'll be supplementing this next round of learning with new learning tools. So I just have to say that in this next phase for us as elementary people, bringing math in focus to this type of teaching and learning is really tricky when you take on a constructivist approach to math where kids should be touching things and building and making sense of things first. It's a little bit tricky. So today, the elementary principals and I had an hour-and-a-half hangout with 3 consultants from Math in Focus. And we were saying, what do you guys got? What are you working on? How can you help us, kind of thing. And they were actually very, very helpful. The Ed platform that they have, we dabble in it. We use it a little bit. We use it in certain places. And that platform appears to have lots of opportunity for more interactive math experiences for our children. So we will be working with Math in Focus, probably setting up some professional development with teachers to be sure they really are comfortable with that platform and can bring it into the expectations for the next 2 weeks. So we were really happy. We reached out to them and we felt some relief hearing how they could service us. And we have some professional development time with them. So this will work out really nicely, and they'll do some hangouts with teachers. Here's the other thing that I need to just say out loud, that we are super, like everyone, sensitive to the emotional wellness of our students. And in all our planning, we take this very seriously. We're working morning meetings. We're going to get our social workers involved in this next level of planning to help us with some circles. and pushing that out, working with kids in that way. And we also will soon be asking families to fill out on a daily basis, children and families to fill out what we're calling a reflective survey. And in that reflective survey, we're asking them how they are doing, how they are feeling, because we want to stay on top of any of the emotional and, the well-being of our kids. And we want to be able to provide them with the resources they need if they're not feeling good. So that is something that will be going starting in the near future. So we'll be asking families every single day, how are you guys feeling? How are you all doing? And how did this learning go today? What went really well? Can you give us some information about what you need, so that we'll be on a daily communication through an actual communication tool. So I guess, the other thing that comes with the next phase when we go to those other ways to work with our kids and their family comes, this other part of the work, which is being sure that our teachers are really ready to take this on. And so along with Dr. Alm, we are setting up for some professional learning. We have almost a whole week filled of people volunteering to teach teachers, colleagues, all kinds of things that they will need to enhance the next 2 weeks and to make this next part of learning even more enriching and more interactive. And that's where we are. We're working really hard together. I have to say, this is a time for offerings. This is a time for kindness. This is a time where we are going more public with our practice than ever before, because we have a lot to learn, just as educators in general. And so while it's hard, it's very heartening and I'm on many levels, very emotional. I feel like we're off to a good start, and we have good plans to make it better.
Thanks, Carrie Ann. Good evening, everybody. I too would like to begin with a place of gratitude and specifically thank the board for their support in these tough times. Faculty, administrators, my colleagues, it's been really amazing to see everybody come together. So I'll try not to be redundant or duplicate any of the things that Carrie Ann had shared that really cover kind of district-wide efforts, but including the preparations. She's kind of already summarized what the preparations were like at the secondary level. So as to be expected, at first this week, it was a bit overwhelming for everybody involved. That's natural. But the credit goes to all the educators, admins, support staff, clerical, you name it. Our whole district has been humming. We've all been leaning in and making magic happen. So by all accounts, with all those challenges, it seems to be going quite well and better than we could have ever imagined with just the short amount of time to prepare for this. Students and teachers are working hard and they're communicating well, and we are engaging in virtual school or distance learning as much to the extent that's possible. And so as we go forward, this family check-in that we sent out today is going to be extremely helpful in shaping the directions for phase 2. It's going to really carefully inform for us, monitoring workloads and making sure that we're hitting the exact right amount while tending to the social emotional needs of our students. So starting tomorrow, similarly, we're going to be implementing student self check-in. So that way we have a good sense of how it's working for every student, but also be able to identify students who haven't been able to check in or might be disconnected. And Friday, we'll also be starting an attendance structure on the faculty side, so the faculty be able to log their attendance from their perspective of students' a level of engagement, while at the same time we have a student kind of self-reporting their level of engagement and how they're progressing with their work. We also have a kind of an SEL check built into that student check-in, so we will be able to more quickly identify students that need a little extra support, whether it's a teaching assistant or a clinician or somebody or a guidance counselor to reach out to them. So our goal is the same as our goal always is, right? Our goal is to be able to monitor our student experience, our ongoing, we'll call it a virtual culture climate, and our goal is really to continue to maintain a personalized education to the greatest extent that we can. And a part of that is going to be doing everything we can to remove any barriers that exist to that personalized education. So that's our ultimate goal. It's the same as it always is. Carrie Ann highlighted these PD offerings that we're very excited to be able to roll out to the staff district-wide. And I know that a lot of peer-to-peer collaboration going on a daily basis. Folks giving in their own meets and their own kind of professional support to one another. Our administrators have been very engaged with the various departments and subgroups associated with our system, whether it's the clinicians or guidance counselors. So there's a tremendous amount of communication and collaboration going on. And we're really excited to move into phase 2 and to be able to continue to support our students and improve our level of support.
Hang on, we have a 2-year-old. I gotta get rid of him. I'll be right back.
Hey,
All
buddy.
right, so I thought maybe right now Alita's joined us and she would just give a quick update on our food service. We know that, as we look at providing services, we've been doing some of this already with our regular day, but there are a lot of needy families. So credit to Alita and Star who've worked to try to lift this program. So Alita, do you want to share an update? You're gonna have to unmute yourself too. I'm sure what she's saying is profound. You need to unmute yourself, Alita.
Who's the leader? Can you unmute her?
There she goes.
For the first, I just want to go over the business office in general. For the first time, we paid staff remotely successfully. We had no issues, which was very impressive. So we paid everybody successfully remotely, and that's very significant. That's time we've done it.
Alita, can I ask you to, I'm sorry, we didn't hear the beginning. I think you were unmuted. Could you just start? We first want to welcome you and say hello and thank you for everything that you've been doing. And we've all been saying that. And I know you joined, a little while ago and we're listening in. So, if you could just start from the beginning, that would be great. Where your check-in. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Alita Zuber. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business, and I'm excited to be on this epic phone call conference call. First time we're doing it. And it's also the first time we've made payroll payments remotely, which is impressive. And we had little to no issues. So I just wanted to thank my business staff for that. We've also made vendor payments remotely from people's homes, and there were certain people who had to go out and actually physically make payments to people via paycheck. But over the most part, we had no issues. The other thing I wanted to point out, as Dr. Sanchez referred to, is the fact that we had over 2,400 meals to our students in less than a week. And the 2 sites that we are providing meals to students from is Park High School from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., both breakfast and lunch. So as of last Thursday, we fed over 2,400 meals to our families.
All right, so obviously I want to thank, there's a lot of thank yous to go around. We've noted it before, from Alita to Carrie Ann, Brian, and the entire district and community. And in addition to that, I just want to thank the community. I know they too have put forth efforts to support the need for food in our community for various families. And then I just want to remind everyone that we continue to try to evolve and send out various resources to our families and give them updates on what's happening. Whether it's in the form of our website. We've provided sort of this family educational plan guide that's available. I'd ask and remind families of the Just Ask. That's also, we've used it primarily for budget purposes over the course of the years. It's a good space to ask general questions regarding procedures, but obviously they can always reach out to their building principals via email. And social media has been a platform we're using to get out information. Today was the first time I tried a Facebook Live session with families, and we had just seemed like a large number of individuals seemed to have viewed the session, and there were some good questions that we were able to answer on the spot. So we'll continue to try to do that over the course of next week as well. And then the last two pieces I just want to highlight, it's just safety. It's worth repeating the safety measures that we want everyone to continue to take, from good practice of washing their hands, but also the importance of social distancing. It's something that I know as a board we've looked to maintain our track open, but it's really important that our students, if they're watching this board meeting and or their families, remind each other of the importance of social distancing, and if they were to use the fields, that this is basically for individual type exercises, and still we want individuals to be separated by a minimum of 10 feet. And we've asked some staff to oversee the fields, but nonetheless, things can happen, and we need everyone's help in this. And then finally is just school calendar. The executive order basically ends on Wednesday of next week. And the question becomes, what happens thereafter? My sense, and this is just, there's nothing official, is that it will be extended. And it looks at this point, but that there could be the April break that exists in our calendar could be something that will still be available to us, albeit, it's not all of us will be at home, but that will be a transition in our calendar that we'll have to anticipate. But more to come on that. It's not official, but I'll put something out to community members and staff should it be verified and be facts. So that's our update on our response to the coronavirus. I think there's a lot of things that are going, that we've lifted and done well, and I think there's a recognition that there's items that we know we need to improve on, and we're working towards doing that. The survey that was just given out to families, actually, by last count, I think there were approximately 400 plus responses, and we put that out probably around 2:00 this afternoon. So that's a good number. We don't get that even if we leave that open for a week in most surveys. So, and there's just some good information that, as we continue to evolve and hear from families in terms of what's working and not, that we can use in our future plannings to help support them and make the important adjustments that are necessary during this period of time. So that's more than an update. That's a full report. So I'll just open it up for the Board of Education for a question or comments.
Okay. Thanks, Ray. Just anybody, if you have a question, just feel free and ask it. Just unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I went to Craven Jamaican today, actually, just to get food, and the owner said that he wanted to donate some hot meals to the district. How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, I would say right now the best individuals to the point people would be Megan Massagiacomo and Kim Mauricio. But if he contacts me, I'll put him in touch with the right person.
Okay, I'll shoot him a text. Thank you.
Can I just add one other thing that I think is worthy of reminding everybody that we did? So we created a distance learning document for families that I think you all have seen, that has a little bit of information on everything that parents and families might be asking about, from ACTs to APs to the way things are going. And I just want to remind everybody that that document is available too for families.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I think that I wanted to first say more than anything else is that I know that we consider our EMS and our police officers and our nurses and our doctors as sort of frontline workers, but I definitely consider our teachers and our administrators and the staff of our school district frontline workers as well. And I know that people are personally, arguably putting themselves at some degree of risk by handing out meals and preparing things for families and making sure that our families are connected. And I'm extremely appreciative that people are doing that and willing to do that. And I am praying for everybody, and I am hoping that everybody is staying safe. And I just wanted, to the extent that anybody is watching this, I would just want you to, I'm seeing videos and I'm seeing pictures of people being warriors in our community, and it's not going unnoticed. And I'm extremely appreciative of that. And I'm extremely grateful and appreciative of the fact that all of this is totally unprecedented in terms of like the remote teaching, everything else, and that it is extremely difficult. So I'm grateful that I know we're all working really long hours and we're balancing a gazillion things. So, that's sort of my expression of gratitude, and I just wanted everybody to know that. And I am very, very hopeful that we will look back on this moment, and I'm hopeful that it will be brief and it will be nothing more than a paragraph in a history book someday, and that we'll remember it as one of the most challenging times in our lives, but our children will remember it as exciting and something that they found new ways to connect to each other and their parents in. I guess that's my hope. So, along those lines, in terms of just thinking about the elementary students, that's the universe that I live in. It has dawned on me over the last, because I've been doing the home school for 8 days now. And it has dawned on me that the way that it is shaping out is some of our youngest learners are very visual and very auditory learners, and they're now being expected to learn sort of like a reading-based format, and it's very challenging for them. I know that we're looking into it. I just felt like I had to say it out loud. That in it, I understand that there is some pushback regarding video technology, and I'm hoping that we can get there. I really, truly am hoping. I know early intervention is actively doing telehealth. It's happening every day in my household. That's the Department of Health is agreeing to that. I'm hoping we can get there. If we can't, I'm hoping we can get to a point where we have simple 5-minute audio lessons that our learners can listen to, right? That will tell them. And I'm thinking this is a long-term thing now. My headspace is at, we're going to be in this for quite a while. Even something as simple as this is the opinion question that I want you to answer, and go ahead and write it down, makes a big difference versus them having to read that and then realizing our parents who are juggling all these gazillion different things, having their kids being able to have access to even just an audio recording, I feel like would make a big difference. So I know you're looking into that, and I thank you for continuing to look into that. And then the specials at the elementary level as well. There are so many totally outside the box, creative things that can be done to keep our elementary students occupied for an hour or more. And I'm sure that our teachers are researching that and looking into it, and I can't wait to see what they provide. And I'm so grateful that everybody is spending so much time on this. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Okay. Diana, I know you put a question on the chat. I'm just going to read it, unless Diana, you want to read it, but I'll read it in right here. The families that are eligible for childcare for first responders and healthcare workers, have they begun to use the facilities that we've partnered with?
Yeah, So I'll speak to that. It's taken us. We've reached out to. Over the weekend, we had another survey, or actually a request, to let us know if in fact they need the childcare. It hasn't been easy to meet that requirement because of just internal staff and their interest in participating. You know, obviously there's some apprehension and concern about their own well-being. But we've secured a partner. We're in the process of solidifying some of the the necessary staffing and other requirements. For example, we have to make sure that there's a nurse to take the temperature of each child that enters the facility. So we're working with our nursing staff. We've reached out to Open Door. We actually even reached out to OVAC to see if they can assist us in that, in meeting that requirement. So if all goes well, we'll be ready to go early next week. So I'll share more specifically with the board and obviously the families that have made the request. The challenge is meeting some of the age requirements, and also I would say generally students with special needs, and sometimes they're one-to-one requirements. I would say that's just another challenge that we have to overcome and figure out collectively. So that one has been a real monumental lift to find someone and at the same time meet all the requirements that are necessary. Early next week, though.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Because I have a couple of comments, but anybody else want to ask their questions or comment? Just unmute your mic. All right. Well, I just want to, first just say in general, distant learning, being that we just all got this up and going in the last, or, have even tried in the beginning of this week, it's, how difficult it is. And I think what I heard out of everybody saying is that the biggest thing was, how is everybody doing? How are the children doing? How are the families doing? How are your colleagues doing? How are each of you doing? That's really important. That's the first and foremost that I think I'm recognizing, and I see that everybody is putting that first and foremost. In terms of, the state testing, 3rd through 8th grade state testing, and NYSESLOT and alternate testing has been canceled for the year, and that takes a lot of pressure off of delivery of instruction. So thank you, everybody, for updating us on that. I think there's still questions to be answered in terms of region exams, finals, grading, delivery of instruction. And as Dr. Sanchez and everybody has pointed out, that delivering instruction and the one-to-one needs of our, most vulnerable students sometimes cannot be replaced by distant learning on any level, and for our general education students either. So this is just monumental. Just wanted to say that, and thank everybody again. And we know that every day is a new day and new challenges. So the expectations, are just to make sure that everybody's doing well and doing okay and getting what they need. So thank you for that. I wanted to also make sure that we have, because we're going to be moving into the budget presentation in a few seconds. And I just want to make sure if anybody has any more questions to ask now, and we can certainly do that afterwards for board when we have more board dialogue. I'll give everybody a second. If
I
anybody
just had a quick comment too. I've been going on Facebook Live every day and doing a virtual read aloud. So if that's something we want to communicate to our kids, they're more than welcome to, and trying to do that at least once a day, mostly pre-K to 5th graders. So any other ideas that we have or we could do to try to continue providing the sense of normalcy, doing the read aloud, stuff like that, I'm open to.
Okay, great.
Lisa, there was one thing I wanted to add. I don't want to interrupt you though. And that was I've just been contacted by some parents in the dual language program and special education, kind of asking for more direction from the district about both of those, and what they should be doing or can expect. So I'm just bringing that forth.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I also just want to add thank you to the district for thinking about all the privacy concerns as we're doing distant learning and all those challenges that go into that with our children and educators being on online programs and the importance of the protections there for everybody. So thank you for keeping that also first and foremost, because in haste, we don't want to do anything that, we won't be able to shift back. So thank you for keeping that. And for Mike Hanna, we must say, our Director of Technology, who has just been, extraordinary, and his team in helping people get their technology. So, and I know, and even helping us get this board meeting up and going along with our district clerk, Illy Ortiz. So thank you. So if we have no more questions right now or comments, I think it's good that we move into the budget presentation. So, and then there'll be more time for more dialogue after that. So Dr. Sanchez and Alita?
Okay, I'm gonna do my best to practice this before. Clearly, I didn't practice enough.
Are you sharing the screen?
Yeah, I have to share my screen, right?
And then you click on the,
Yeah, I'm looking for my box. Okay, here we go. Sorry. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
No.
not yet.
Next time, if you wear glasses, we can see the screen and the reflection of your glasses.
Yep,
There we
it's coming. There we go.
We got jokes.
I tried.
All right, just give me a moment.
I'll take the time now to appreciate the lipstick murals in the back of Alita's room.
Oh my God, you can see that?
Yes, and they're great.
I can't see it on when I show it. Oh no. Let me change position.
All right. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So obviously it's a continuation of our budget discussions, but things have changed significantly since we last met. And so there's a lot more questions and answers embedded in this presentation. I know that we've started on a journey where we thought we were going to basically come to an end and iron out some details, but there's still a lot of unknowns that I thought would be really important for us to discuss and talk about. So I'm just going to start off by, clearly I've shown this before, but even with all the discussions and everything that we've noted, everything starts with our children. It's been the focus of the discussions just earlier related to the impact of the coronavirus on our district, but also just in this budget process, and we can't forget that. It's a quick reminder. The other just essential piece, and this is more of a broader question, is what is the impact of the coronavirus on our budget? We talked about what it's having related to our lives and how we've had to instruct differently, but there are some impact on the budget, on our state, and likely trickling down to our work here in the school district. So this was a direct quote. You can see the source. It's cited on Thomas DiNapoli, our New York State Controller's website. And I'm just going to read for the board and eventually for the viewing audience. He notes that we estimate that revenues could be $4 billion below projections of the executive budget. We cannot rule out a more severe recession, however, or additional stock market declines. which could lower the outlook for tax revenues significantly more. We have entered a new economic reality. No one knows how long the situation will last, but we must prepare to meet the financial challenges it poses for New York right now and in the future. It goes on to say that the state's pension fund also faces challenges. Financial markets remain in turmoil as we near March 31st, when we calculate the fund's year-end value. So the reason for sharing this is just that clearly the coronavirus is having an impact on the economy. Things have slowed down. Revenues have been lost. He's projecting approximately $4 billion of lost revenue. I've seen reports where that number could be a little bit more or a little bit less. And clearly we've seen the ups and downs on the stock market. But I would also share too is, in the context is not only what the impact might be for this year, but also, as we project out into future years, when we look at the impact on pension and potential health insurance costs or premium costs. So these continue to be unanswered questions. Some of them budget we need to do. First of all, is how will voters cast their votes as it relates to our budget? Will we have a normal timeline in terms of our budget vote, or will that be extended? There's discussion of moving it to June. And there's also been discussions of having sort of a consensus vote from the Board of Education, where that would be the adopted budget. The other parts of it is, other questions relate to, will state aid be reduced? If so, what is the direction that we as a collective board with school district take? We've heard potential flat state aid to potential reductions. Keeping in mind that about the estimates, and Alita can correct me, but it's about $700,000 increase in state aid that we estimated. So that was just based on the executive budgets. Other questions include, will there be any mandate relief? As the legislators look at it, are there any things that they might help us with that could address or mitigate or address some of the costs that we have currently and maybe be a cost savings? The other bigger question that we're asking ourselves, and I wouldn't say bigger question, but one of the essential questions is, what might we want to consider now to address the future? We are looking at our budget currently. We know that there are a variety of expenses that we anticipated for this year that are no longer expenses because our schools are closed. So that being the case, are there potential items that we anticipated paying for next year that we might be able to address now, as well as just items that we need to consider replacing for next year as well. For example, books that were distributed to students. I had a conversation with our director for cultural arts, who went, and it should be noted, went door to door to distribute instruments to our students. And he's worried about those instruments coming back, maybe not in the conditions they were originally. The computers we distributed, and anticipate another 200 computers being distributed this Friday. Those are all questions that we need to consider, and those are things that we might want to do now as we think about the future. The federal government's decision with the stimulus package, is that going to have an impact on our school finances? Can we project the impact of this year's crisis on future budgets? And I mentioned pensions and healthcare. And the other part, and kind of related to the now and future question, is there an opportunity now in this crisis that we can address financially, and something we should consider? Additional question is, what is the impact? Now we get to the really at the student level. What's the impact of the closure will have on our student learning? While we're continuing, and there's a lot of great efforts, as were noted a little while ago, there's going to be student needs, different student needs than what we anticipated when we started this budget process. So we're thinking really carefully as an administrative team, and we don't yet have the answers about what are some things we need to consider, whether that's summer or over the course of the year, that we need to really look at to make sure that we address the impact of this long-term closure to our schools, and the relation, and also thinking about it through the lens of social emotional needs of children. How will the length of time impact our future programming? The longer we're out, shifts and continues to be a question that we may need to consider as we go forward. And the last one, and it's a question, conversation I had with SED, are there some mandates and specific programming that they're going to ask us or require us to offer? One of the questions we asked the commissioner the other day was, will they mandate summer school while we offer it? Maybe there are, it's just, we're not sure if there are other requirements associated with that. And also just keeping in mind, we had a conversation earlier with our directors. Maureen had mentioned maybe a need to increase the number of students that we serve in our ESY program. That's our extended year program, primarily to serve students with special needs. We also even had a conversation with our director of ENL, Ms. Nancy Dela Cruz, and she mentioned now that there might be more students that remain needing ENL services more than what we anticipated. And is that going to be something we need to consider related to staffing as we go forward? All unanswered questions. These are just some items that we look at and we can do. Don't want to say they're solid just yet, but these are items that we can do without impacting the budget at all and reshifting some of the anticipated expenditures when we first proposed the budget to the Board of Education and to the community. One is addressing music education class size in music classes, primarily instrumental, is larger than we want to see it. And adding a music teacher would be beneficial in terms of supporting that. And also potential social worker or clinician to support elementary, primarily to support more of the family needs. And this is more so in anticipation of, what we might see this long-term impact having on students, but also just in general, we know that there's a need for more clinicians, particularly at the elementary schools. Budget reallocation is something we're looking at, and it actually relates to the now and then. We are looking and having conversations with our facilities director. There are facility improvements in our budget currently projected for the 2021 school year that we might be able to do this current year because our schools are closed and start to address. So he is carefully looking at. We'll have a better sense by April 1st, which is when we have our next board meeting, where if there are items that we can do now with the current and existing budget that we might come back to the board and make the request that we address them this current school year. And then in turn, that provides us the opportunity to redistribute some of the resources that we anticipated spending next year to address various needs that we have for students, whether that's in the term of more extended day, whether it's an additional staff member. All of those are potentials that we're all really carefully looking at right now, and are still, I wouldn't say it's really black and white. It's still a little bit gray for us as we continue to think about what's happening around us and our student needs. Items we're still researching. We gave you a sense of what we want for after school, but we're trying to still solidify that. Capital projects, the facility subcommittee met, I believe it was Monday, and we started looking at some plans, and that also needs to be solidified before obviously the budget is approved, or we would be in a position to present something for final approval. We looked at, particularly specifically the library at the high school. Some of the thoughts were adding a second floor. I think it involves a lot more discussion. And also we need to consider the costs associated with it. And then also researching, and again, this comes back to what are the needs of our students, other kinds of offerings that we might want to offer, we want to present and have opportunities for our students over the summer that can help address their needs. This serves as a reminder. This is where we are now. And I would say you can see the asterisk that says we're waiting for state aid. Our tax levy our increase is still at 1.51. And you can note the budget amount is 137,558,000. And the appropriated fund balance is about $2.4 million. And certainly that could shift based on revenue projections potentially being less. And that's a broader question that we might want to have with the board If in fact we lose revenue, the questions might be either using more appropriated fund balance, cuts to the budget in terms of staffing, or I wouldn't say just staffing in various other areas to fill the gap of lost revenue that we may have seen. So those are all questions to have with the Board of Education. And these are the important dates that we continue to remind ourselves. We've added some board meetings. We might want to consider some additional meetings just based on what we're seeing and anticipation of what we might hear coming from the state budget. You know, we like to say that everything will be finalized maybe this weekend, but by all accounts, it's likely that we may not hear it till April 1st, which is when the state budget needs to technically be completed. But yet knowing that these are unprecedented times, so whether that happens on April 1st is still to be determined. But we hope that everyone remains engaged, and that April 19th, I say too, is also subject to change and more likely to change than remain on the 19th. And clearly, we just want to thank you and engage in a discussion with the board around these sort of major questions and just additional thoughts that you want us to consider, because there's a lot of, clearly there's a lot that's been changed in this period of time. So I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez. So feel free to unmute your mic and ask your questions. I guess I'll start with a question. I know now that the 3rd through 8th grade tests are canceled. Can you share a little bit with us about some of the expenses that were associated with that, and that now?
Yeah. Well, that's a good example of an area that we anticipated having, having to use or having to pay for. I don't have the exact number in terms of what we spend. It is a significant amount for 3 through 8, and I believe we added 4th grade science as well to the scoring. So this year, that's money that's not going to be spent to this point because the exams have been aren't going to be offered to our students. So we can get to the number, but it's a good example of, in the now having some savings that we might want to use strategically to address needs and give us greater flexibility for next year.
And then on the other side, you brought up of ordering, Chromebooks and technology and textbooks and instruments. We don't even know those numbers, and we're still, working through ordering and just getting through that, ordering.
Yeah, so I would just add, we've asked, it was only today, Mr. Morrison had shared his concern regarding the distribution of the instruments and the impact it might have on just the actual instruments themselves. We've been addressing, and teachers have been fixing them throughout the year, but now that they're out of our hands for period of time, they may come back in conditions that call for them to have to be replaced. Similarly, in the area of textbook, and I would say textbooks were more just our classroom libraries were really they were given out to students, and I can anticipate that some will come back, some will come back in less than desirable condition, and some will come back in pristine condition. In either case, I think we need to be ready, and it's never a bad idea to have more books in the hands of our children. So those are things we're thinking about. And I just want to share for the board too, as it relates to technology, Mr. Hanna has estimated, based on conversations with Dell and other providers, that it's about a 4 to 6 month lag, if I'm quoting him correctly, to receive computers. So if we're going to do that, the sooner we choose to do that, the better, because we don't want it to impact the 2021 school year.
Okay.
Do you have any way to possibly approximate the type of money we're talking about not being able to spend? Like if we were to say, let's do what Virginia did, school doesn't go back in session, are we able to approximate what that means financially in any way?
Yeah, that's more of a, I'll leave that to turn that over to Alita.
As I told you before, we are in the process of estimating our fund balance. So when we estimate fund balance, we look at expenditures actually all the way through the end of the school year and make estimates, but we have not done that exercise for consideration of the whole school year being not operating in a full school year. So when we do our encumbrances, we based it on the school district actually being in session for the whole year. But we have not done an exercise where we said, hey, wait a minute, we're not actually in school session for the full year. Where are the expenses going to lie? So we can look at because in that instance, we wouldn't assume any additional supplies. We wouldn't assume any additional field trips. We wouldn't assume any additional, we would still assume salaries and benefits. That's the business expense that would still be fully realized because we're not laying people off. But other smaller expenses, normally we would assume that we would annualize. We have not gone down that path yet, but we can do that.
I think it would be helpful just in terms of if we are asked to approve major decision making. And I'm more that I want to say, just I don't have an understanding of whether that's $1 million or $5 million. So I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
And then taking into account, of course, what happens in the summertime and things that I know Dr. Sanchez brought up in terms of trying to deliver services to our families, because we don't know where we're going to be. We're
Right.
in, yeah. So that's going to be very hard to estimate.
Right.
Right, and that's being estimated for the following school year.
Yeah.
That would include expenses for the following school year budget. It wouldn't be part of the
Right. Oh, that's
current year.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. When that is discussed, or when you do figure out what it's going to be, what's going to be left over. I think we talked about that in either the last meeting or the meeting before that. What happens when you have that excess money left over at the end of the budget and it rolls over into the next? How is that? How freely is that going to be able to be utilized in the next budget, being that it's leftover money from an already approved budget?
So technically, we're supposed to have 4% unappropriated fund balance. That's the free to use money. So right now we are at 6%, which is about $2.5 or more million over the 4%. So technically, we're only supposed to have about $4 million freely to use for the following year's budget. So if you take that into dollars, that's about $5 million or $4.5 million. That's all we're supposed to have left over. All the other additional amounts that we would have left over, say we ended the school year early, is supposed to go into different accounts or go back to reducing the tax levy. So if it has to go into either tax cert, has to go into our encumbrances, like if we plan on purchasing things and we encumber the money this year, we can do that as well. That's part of reserves. It has to go into our other reserves. So that's where it has to go. But technically, we're only supposed to have about $5 million left over for unappropriated fund balance. So that's the amount of money that we need to pay for anything that we think we need for the upcoming year's budget.
Okay.
But if we end the school year earlier and we aren't spending as much as we need to, then we will have additional fund balance. We will be over the 4%. I can guarantee you we're going to be over the 4%. At least not considering what we're appropriating for the following year. We know we're already over. So we're going to be at least over that amount, not considering the amount that we are appropriating for the for the ensuing budget year, for the 2020-21 budget year.
Right. And then there'll be a shift also possibly in the reserves and what's needed in terms of an economic
Correct.
that you'll,
Correct.
in terms of even people having more grievances with taxes in their property, and then what we need.
Yes, that's all of that. Yes. And we normally do that in June.
Right. So that we have to take that into account. Okay. Yep.
Can we use those, like the funds that we're saving right now? Can we use those for capital projects?
Yes.
That's basically what we're looking at right now. We're looking at some facilities improvement. For example, there was a need for a new PA system at Claremont School. Just using that as an example, that's anticipated expense that we would have for next year. Mr. Mance, our director of facilities, is looking at potentially doing it now while schools are closed. If school closes for a longer period of time, let's just say the extreme, which is through June, then that's probably an area where we may want to consider trying to do, and then it offsets next year's budget, and we can use those funds towards student. We don't necessarily have to fill it with more capital improvements. We can begin looking at those funds and using it towards student programming, staffing. There's greater flexibility, is my point.
Can I go back in time a little bit? Just because I missed speaking at the last board meeting, which was, I feel like it was literally a universe ago, and everything's just so drastically changed. But I think, as everybody knows, I always like to look to the past to figure out what kind of trends we're seeing and what that might do to help shape our future decision making. So if it's okay, I kind of want to share my thoughts a little bit about where my thought process was, I guess 2 weeks ago. And that was that, in general, I'm extremely grateful that over the past number of years, we have typically budgeted conservatively, assuming sort of a worst case financial scenario, which has been, good for many reasons. To the extent that, as of March 11th, I wasn't worried about covering a large tax cert case, even if the worst case scenario came true. And I wasn't worried about the district's ability to cover a large TRS increase. And looking at the numbers, I wasn't worried that we would be caught short due to an unexpected capital expense, such as like a sudden need to upgrade our phone system, right? And I think that everyone has taken a really close look at the reserves this year and has put in a lot of work around that effort. And, I was certainly at a point where I was actually comfortable starting to draw down on them for various projects and proposals, not necessarily for operating expenses, but for, a large capital project. A robust after-school program in the elementary level. Philosophically, my opinion was that there was money to be spent there that I was comfortable spending in a prudent way that was on non-reoccurring or sort of semi-reoccurring expenses, extra busing, after-school programming, field trips, academic competition fees, even an extra psychologist or a social worker. And, philosophically, I was also okay having these things, even if we weren't entirely sure that 10 years from now we were going to be able to keep them. And where that was coming from was, it doesn't appear that we ever forecasted, 5-10 years ago that we would have these reserves the way that we had them. So I was comfortable that we might be able to continue them and sort of find a way. I don't necessarily know where I stand now. I don't think any of us can possibly know that now. I feel like the situation is changing day by day. Again, going back in time, I certainly think, and I definitely still think this, and I still think that the need is going to be even more, whenever we do come back to school, that robust after-school programming, programming that's amplified across all grade levels, including elementary levels, programming that includes buses, summer school that includes buses, all of these things to support our students are going to be extremely important. And I hope that we will continue to keep looking at them, even though everything is extremely uncertain. I think I said this to you privately, Dr. Ray, and I'll say it again now, that you come to me and you say, I think we need XYZ amount of Chromebooks or XYZ amount of iPads for students in order to get them on the track that they need to be. And I'm going to support you in that endeavor. And I still repeat that as well. So I guess just I'm looking forward to having more dialogue, to the extent that we are all dealing with ridiculously unknown, unquantifiable variables. I don't know what else to say other than these are my thoughts.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay. Anybody else? Just unmute your mic. Frank?
This is Frank, yeah. So, I'll be short just to not echo everything else everyone said. I guess, and I know we're doing this, we didn't specifically put it into the presentation because there's so many things to cover right now, but we do need to really revise our projections for sales tax for next year and really take a very, very conservative approach on that, and that will affect this number as well. But I think we should anticipate, having a fraction of what we were anticipating getting in there. And the other thing that you brought up, Ray, is, the last time we had a similar forecast like this, we got an increase in state aid, but then we also had a gap elimination program that basically a lot of that aid back. So I think just being realistic and where the revenues are at the state level and what the projections are, we need to be able to we need to be ready to take a pretty big hit, would be my estimate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go. Obviously all this is subject to change in a week or two when the budget's done. I think actually, I know Ray, in the presentation you said we left off at 151. I think the last presentation we had, we were at 1% as a levy. So obviously have to revisit that number. Sales taxes, there's gonna be a bunch of things where like sales tax likely will be lower next year, but this year and the, I guess, piece of the year before, we've been collecting more than we didn't budget for it, and we got it. So it's figured out in the budget logistics. Like, we know we have extra money from this year that we're not using from sales tax, that in theory you would use to offset next year's sales tax shortfall. So you don't actually really have a shortfall. I just don't know budget wise how you work through those logistics. I think there's some, it's whatever, 2-3 weeks into this. I don't know if this will gaining traction, but it seems like, again, going back to, I think, Catherine's question about how much we could have left over, depending on the scenario here. But we've had 3 or 4 million left over every year for a couple of years that we've allocated place. And obviously this year will be a good year to allocate money to TRS, to the max, to offset some of that hit in the future. I know we talked about facilities, but a lot of districts are going to, again, in the worst case, there's no school scenario, which I obviously will have time to absorb, I guess. There'll be a lot of districts that have leftover money from this year that you could use to offset next year. But if you do it, the tax cap you can't. Like, you have the money, but you can't use it. So it's too soon to worry about legislative fixes, but it seemed like there's a conversation there with Albany to say, potentially, we have money left over from this year. You have to work with us to let us use it for next year. But we'll see how that plays out. I think, and we talked about more meetings. At the end, when we debrief, we can talk about facilities. It seems like we're going to need a couple meetings just to, I don't know if they're necessarily long meetings, but just to keep updating the full board on the facility options. And as we know more from architects and costs, there are definitely some pretty big moving parts there that we don't want to get too close to our deadlines. We don't know what our deadlines are. So we'll see what that is, but there's some big dollars. And again, if there's there's more money left over from this year scenario, we might want to look at more facilities options with some of that money for next year. And I guess summer school is the same thing. It's that question of, and Alita, I just don't know how to do this in the budget, and you don't have to explain it to me necessarily right now, but it's just that question of, can we put an extra, I don't know, $500,000 in the budget using fund balance that we would anticipate having left over from this year, even if we're over 4%, knowing that might cover, the unanticipated or the required summer school programs that we want to and need to have as a result of this current issue. Again, it just seems like there should be a way to take the money we're not spending this year, if we're actually not going to end up spending it, and use that money to fund the program next year. I just don't know in the budget mechanics how to do that, but seems like the money there. So I think on the more meetings, again, I don't think they need to be long, but we have a lot of moving parts in the next month or so. And then if this is the new normal with school meetings being remote, it won't be as painful to get on for a call and do that more frequently. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify. Greg, you had mentioned the being at 1. That was an option that we presented that we could do. It didn't seem like we had a consensus just yet, but Alita and I presented that something that we showed how the budget could be at 1 if we, but it would be at the expense of taking some things out from the budget. So, and we can revisit that conversation as well.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Want to give some others some opportunity? Anybody else? No, wait till you unmute your mic. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I guess that finishes our presentation of the budget for now, to be continued. We do have some other items to go over in a minute.
If I could, I think one of the comments that was brought up, and I'm happy to work with Lisa Lee is the I think the term lots of moving parts is I would say on some level maybe an understatement or underscoring some of the things that we still have to address. So we can look at the calendar again based on where we are, and this break is here because we normally have our April break, but we may want to consider, just because facilities is worthy of conversations, as well as contingent on what the final state budget is. There might involve also more conversations.
And thank you.
I would think we definitely want to try and meet that April 7th, 8th kind of a date.
Yeah.
Okay.
For both the reasons you just said.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We'll have some more time for board dialogue. Illy, do you want to share the agenda, or would you like me to share the agenda? I'm happy to do that too.
I have it right here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Illy. Thank you again for all your hard work in making sure we have everything we need to make this happen. Really appreciate it. Illy, we still can't see your screen. I guess you're still trying to share it.
Is that, can you see it?
Not yet. Did you stop sharing your screen by any chance?
Sure. Or if anything else, I can show my
There we
board
go.
agenda.
We have it. It was. We got it. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, great. All right. So just want to, okay, so we're going to be moving into the business of the board.
We need to unmute, right?
Yep, if everybody can unmute. Okay. And I'd like to take a motion to vote on resolutions 4.1 through 4.4.
So I'd like to separate out 4.3.
Okay. So we're going to separate out. So we're going to take, we'll start with a motion to vote on 4.3.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on 4.3? And I will read it. Resolution to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 26th, 2020. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay, thank you. I take a motion to vote on 4.1, 4.2, and resolution 4.4.
So move.
Second.
4.1, resolution to appoint additional consultants for the 2019 through 2020 school year. Resolution 4.2, 4.2, resolution to approve the minutes of the special meeting executive session of February 5th, 2020. 4.4, resolution to approve the policy 5100 student attendance, comprehensive attendance as a second reading. Any discussion?
I just have one question on 4.4, which may not have a great answer, but I was going to ask this is the fairly significant attendance change. So I was going to ask what our communication plan is around it, which given our current status is a whole new light. So the answer may be we're just going to wait and see how things play out and communicate it then. But I was curious if we've thought past the approval of this yet. And if the answer is no, because we got other things to worry about, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll respond, and if Dr. Alm has anything else to share, this is first of all, I just want to thank everyone's effort in getting to this point. Mr. Hancock, Ms. Langley, and there's been a committee of staff members with broader input from the staff at the high school. So it's been internally communicated. I think, right now, I'm not sure everyone would be ready to receive or be prepared to read through this in detail in light of everything else that they're reading from us and the emphasis on, the learning that's taking place right now. But we'll talk to the building and see how we begin to message this in a strategic way and in a meaningful way that people are paying attention, because it is significant. You're right.
I guess it came up a couple days before school got closed, where people were in that dilemma, which could be an again of, for safety reasons, I'd like to leave my kid home, but there's a debate about, if I'm missing too many classes at the high school level, and my kid not going to get credit, which I know we haven't been kind of unofficially announced we weren't doing this year, but I don't think everyone got the message. Obviously, until we passed this, we hadn't come up with a new version. So we just want to be sensitive to it if schools open up. It's somewhat relevant to that process.
Right. Understood.
Okay, so then we have these three resolutions on the floor. Any more comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Moving into our section, regular meeting, curriculum and instruction. I'd like to take a motion to vote on 5.1.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
5.1, resolution to accept recommended placements. Any comments, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, moving into the regular meeting, business office matters. I'd like to take a motion to vote on 6.1 through 6.3.
So moved.
Second.
6.1, resolution to approve the January and February 2020 Treasurer's Report. 6.2, resolution to approve the budget and revenue reports for January and February of 2020. And 6.3, resolution regarding the disposal of broken musical equipment. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. And Ellie, if you could move down the agenda just a little bit for me, that'd be great. Thanks. Great, thank you. Okay, I take a motion to vote on resolution 7.1 and 7.2.
So moved.
Okay, 7.1, resolution regarding professional staff tenure appointments. 7.2, resolution regarding professional staff appointments. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Ray, you might want to,
Yeah, no, I'd like to just take a moment to, we have a special education educator at Claremont School that is receiving tenure. If she's watching, we want to congratulate it's Ponce for Benzo, sorry, for her tenure. She's been in the district for a number of years now and has done an exceptional job. And we just look forward to obviously many more years of service here in the district. So congratulations.
Great. Yes, congratulations. Okay. So that's all we needed to vote on for now. As everybody knows that we are recording, well, everybody here knows that we are recording this and we will be putting this on the website and our YouTube channel for folks to review this board meeting. And then there are places they can email Dr. Sanchez or the Board of Education with any questions. Also, we have the Just Ask email as well, but the press release went out with the emails of the Board of Education and Dr. Sanchez for any questions once you review this. And now I would like to just open this up for continued board committee reports and board dialogue. So if anybody wants to report on, maybe this is a good time to, I mean, we did go over the facilities committee, which I know met virtually this week, but any other committees that I don't think met since the last we had our board meeting, but please jump in.
We didn't meet, but just from an advocacy committee perspective, I do have a concern that in all of the very real other things to worry about, that our census may be overlooked. And that's really important to our representation in Albany. And, you know, I don't know if there's a way for that to be conveyed to our educators to sort of encourage families to be looking at that. Honestly, I'll just say from personally, I almost threw it out in the mail when it came to the house. So I'm concerned that it's not going to get filled out and it's going to affect us. So I'm just throwing that out there from an advocacy perspective and saying we haven't discussed it as a committee.
Just from the census perspective, before everything happened, we did have a census in the schools week, and I through and others went through the different classrooms, and we did sit in some of the sessions where they were discussing the census, specifically at the middle school. So there were activities before the break about the census. So I don't know if you're aware of that. We were supposed to. We took pictures and everything so we could see what we were doing, but I don't think that it went out OBLAST yet. But we did do that, so we can just reconnect with people about that. I don't know from my perspective, we can do it in the classroom, but we can think of other things to do outside of the classroom to kind of talk about the census and talk it up again.
Yeah, I think it might be something to explore.
Yeah.
It would help us.
I appreciate it. It can be lost in everything that's happening right now.
Yeah.
So we can think strategically about, making sure we do our part in educating families about the importance of it. And there were significant efforts before. We just have to adapt now a little bit and remind everyone.
I think we may have a unique opportunity where parents are more connected into the education of the kids more than ever before, and encouraging teachers to kind of connect the census directly to families would serve us. It could be a silver lining. I think it could serve us well.
It's fair. Thank you for that.
Somebody published.
If we can include in with the OBLAST, basically the link to the online census, so that way people can get to it whether or not they got it in the mail.
It's a good idea.
Okay, Greg?
Well, two things. One, somebody published the census number response rates as of yesterday, 2 days ago. Austin Village was at 18%, which had us in the bottom 10 lowest responses in Westchester. 12 was the low, 28 happened to be Briarcliff, which was the high. So we're kind of in the middle between the low and the high, but I don't know where the town of Austin is, but certainly could use some work. Yorktown is 26. I know people were supposed to go to door to door starting, I think, April 1st, which now will not happen for a while if people didn't respond. I guess just a little more on the facilities, and Frank or Kathy, you could add more. Anything else? I think, we did look at, I think last time you saw the budget meeting, a version of the high school library kind of redone. And I think the conclusion the other day was that might add a little bit of capacity, but not a tremendous amount. They looked at adding a full second floor, which you had some openings. You can kind of think of, circular and other openings. So it wasn't, as if it was a completely different world up there. But a full second floor, not a half floor, a third floor. Thought it looked intriguing. There's no cost numbers to it now, so it's a tough conversation to have because we don't know what the costs are. So that's our next step, is to get some cost numbers to see where it is in the realm of feasibility and what you're getting for what you're paying. But that was the leftover. It's still either way. I think even the options we looked at last time look like they might be bigger than we have in the current budget. So there's some work we need to do to get that the budget, whatever we decide to do, we need to get aligned with the budget numbers.
Right.
So, just tying back to the whole census, the push to get the census out there. I know, thankfully we were kind of ahead of the curve on that already with a big push that was going out throughout the whole community, not just with the school community. But I think right now, I don't know who would do this, but I think it's key to try to be creative with the messaging this time, because you're facing people who are basically, if you look through it through the lens of the hierarchy of needs, you kind of have to find a way to tie that census into it, because right now people are worried about physiological and safety nets at this point in time. And so finding a way to kind of tie the benefits of the census and being counted to the very real concerns that people are facing now in this climate, especially here in this community, I think will help people to kind of give it the time of day and to take time out of their day to go online and fill it out, because it's not for nothing that the numbers are really low. Maybe they would have been kind of low anyway, but I think you really have to gauge it in the context of the fact that there are like some very real concerns that are distracting people, I guess, from this. And I guess finding a way to help them understand how this, the census can actually kind of make sure that resources are available even in the best circumstances or in the worst, I think is a key kind of effort, I guess, creative effort this time around, with kind of pushing out the message and to get it filled out. I have just a couple of quick questions, but it's like regarding what are we thinking about as far as whenever the students do come back to school, and are we considering doing some type of, I guess, climate survey to kind of gauge where emotionally the students are going to be when they come back into the school, to kind of prepare the guidance counselors and mental health workers and even the teachers of how they can best, I guess, support that transition back into school? Is there, I don't know, I'm pretty sure there's something being talked about, but I just want to throw that out there. I think that would be a key resource to kind of not be blindsided by the mind, the mindset that a lot of our students will be coming back into the classroom with. No, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Did you want to speak to that real quick on the secondary level? Yeah. Sure. That's exactly kind of what we have in mind when we develop that weekly check-in that's going to start tomorrow. And then I'm sure that as time goes on, you know, and they become more accustomed to doing that check-in, we'll be more pointed in our questions, right? Like right now, it just says, you know, how are you feeling, and how are you doing, and how can we support you better with your remote learning? Those are the three basic questions that are in there now. But as time goes on, we'll be, you know, refining those and adjusting them, and you know, the whole goal is to personalize learning and to remain in contact with our kids as much as we can. But that being said, our more robust panorama culture and climate survey was ready to go. In fact, we were the target week, I think, was probably this week is the way we had it set up. So that's clearly on hold, but we can easily adjust that to put some custom questions in there. So short answer is we'll have two means of doing that. And it is our intention, our full intention to do so.
Okay. Just,
I just wanted to add, Melissa, I think there's a part of this too that we have not necessarily put in place. Like some of the things that Brian mentions are things that are in motion now, but you know, structures when we return, I think involve further conversations, contingent on when that is, and what we're hearing from students along the way is kind of probably going to guide us. But to be fair and honest, I don't think we've really gotten to that point. I think we know what we can do, but I don't, you know, we're sort of more so in the now and trying to address the things that, and trying to gather information that we may not necessarily, you know, we don't have the kids in front of us, and we just want to make sure that we have some of that data. And, you know, the survey that, you know, Dr. Alm is mentioning is going to sort of give us a little bit of a sense, but there's a lot of things we're adjusting to now. And
right, yeah, understandable. I'm just throwing it out there because
no, it's an important piece that we're going to have to consider.
Right. So
and for everyone, I would just add, I mean, I know we're mentioning students, but, you know, I think we need to be cognizant of the impact on staff, impact on families. It's everybody right now. And so, you know, we're cognizant of the SEL and the needs for students, but, you know, our families and our teachers, I mean, let's just say it out loud. There's staff members that are teaching and trying to engage our students, and yet they too are teachers of their own children while they're home. And it's just those are all things that we're all juggling. So being there for each other and being supportive of their social emotional needs is something we all need to be cognizant of.
Right. I just had a quick.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. If it's
say on that one piece of talking about our teachers, and then if somebody gets sick, if a teacher has teaching her own children and teaching our, you know, students of Ossining, and, you know, we can't expect some people to get ill with the virus. So I know that there's a discussion, I'm sure, about substitute. I don't even know how you would substitute this. So it's just, again, unprecedented, but I know that those are scenarios that are very likely to happen.
Right.
So really quickly, Brian, could you just touch on how, in this very unique circumstance that we're supporting, I guess, the upperclassmen who would be seeking out the guidance counselors and things of that nature at this point in time of the year? Do we have anything in place to kind of help them, you know, remotely, you know, juggle all those things that they would normally be handling at this time of the year?
So to Ray's point, I really appreciate the way he framed it, is that, you know, all of this is a work in progress and it evolves every day, and we're going to try to get better and better at it. But, you know, clinicians already have what we call like a caseload. So they've been charged with checking in with the students they had already these established contacts with. Guidance counselors, similar type of scenario. And then it's our goal that this student check-in will help us kind of identify new students that might be struggling, and identify emerging family crises as they happen. That's not the only means is the student check-in, but you know, I think our teachers, our educators in general, who are in constant communication with the students, will be our best means and mechanism for this. With those established ongoing relationships, they're going to be, you know, best identify and then refer students to, you know, more intense or direct, shall I say, clinical support if need be.
Right. I meant like academically, like, you know, so like the juniors and, you know, I guess normally this time of year, they would be a bit more hands-on with, you know, I guess supports and trying to transition to that next step after high school. And I'm not, you know, this maybe it can't be answered now. I guess I'm just throwing it out there. Like, you know, how long this goes on could really impact like the juniors and the seniors who are trying to kind of, you know, get that school-based support to kind of, you know, cement their plans after high school, so to speak, or, you know, the ones that would normally lean heavily on the school for support in that area. But, you know, I'm just throwing it out there. I was just curious
Agreed.
if that was-
Agreed. I mean, that's a huge point. I really appreciate the fact that you're raising it here. I mean, there are some really concrete considerations like, you know, graduation and, you know, we were talking about students of distinction and, you know, prom. There are all kinds of things that will emerge that we're going to support kids around.
Thank you.
I could just share an example that my children, who are both my two remaining children in listening, are in high school, and our guidance counselor reached out to us today regarding scheduling for next year. You know, to update our school counselor on one of my children who goes to BOCES and what those services are like. And the BOCES teachers have reached out to my son. So we're starting to hear, and through the Remind app also, we're getting notifications too. So it's been very helpful. So I started receiving notices earlier in the week. So that scheduling is happening for us right now. And I know that's, I also wanted to share that I happened to be able to sit on a phone call with a number of other board members throughout the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association component schools, and everybody's sharing a lot of different information and how variety of different schools are handling all of these similar challenges. And so I know that all of our schools are sharing with the colleagues as well. And I know Dr. Sanchez too, you're speaking to many, many superintendents as you know, Carrie Ann and Brian are as well within the area, and how we're all kind of solving these issues together. But yeah, no, certainly being if this is your any graduation year, missing prom, graduation, spring musicals, championships, athletics, just tremendous. The list goes on. So we can't make that time up, but I know that there's going to be creative and innovative ways of how to help everybody and get through that. And I've heard a lot of talk about potential things happening in the summer, proms happening in early June and late June rather, and so forth. So there's a lot of creative ideas out there. And I trust in all of us to come up with that and to have that as offerings. I wanted to just share with everybody, there's a lot of, and I know we mentioned it in the beginning, and hopefully when the public will listen to this, there's a lot of food distribution channels happening. There's bags of non-perishable food that's being distributed on Tuesdays and Fridays at the Recreation Department from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and at Market Square from 12 to 2 p.m. and Bethlehem from 4 to 7 p.m. And then also the Galata House is helping with delivering free meals and also doing some tomorrow, Thursday from 4 to 6 at the community center and at Stop and Shop, and also doing some deliveries there. So there's a tremendous amount of work happening in all our variety of different communities in terms of making sure that our that everybody's getting food delivered. And I see a lot of groups on social media trying to identify their neighbors, whether they're elderly, vulnerable, immune compromised, or just really scared to go out to help each other. So it's been pretty amazing, very amazing, as we've seen in a number of crises that we've had in our history. But again, with the social media channels and people just trying to connect, I'm really glad to see that this has been up and running in our community. So kudos to everybody that's helping out and that continues to help out. So, and I think that if anybody has any other resources that they want to share, I know our school website has resources. The village and the town on their websites have resources, variety of different resources out there in terms of health questions, in terms of food, community service, food deliveries, and just overall what the community is being asked to do by our governor and by our county legislator and so forth, county executive. So every day is a new day. And Dr. Sanchez, thank you for doing that Facebook Live. I'm sure that it was extremely helpful for people to hear you live and where they can to get some answers and for you to share what's going on in these times. So I wanted to see if anybody else has any more thoughts before we adjourn. I want to give everybody an opportunity to say a few words.
Just two quick
things. Frank, I'll then
go ahead.
Frank, go ahead. That's fine.
One, this is a nice story, and hopefully we get more of this. But the MBK group is having a virtual meeting tomorrow, so that's a nice, nice little story to get those guys connected. And we've been thinking about reaching out to the mentor group and figuring out how we can mentor during this period. But is that, and then just this is sort of piggybacking on what you were saying about these seniors in particular are going to lose potentially a lot of the senior moments. I lived in Virginia and went to college in Virginia. I've talked to a lot of people down there this week where they're out of school for the year, and their kids have already lost all the spring sports, all the proms, all the graduations. So I know it's so hard to focus outside of Ossining at the moment because we've got enough going on here, but that whole grade is gonna experience this together really across the country, which is, I guess, neither good nor bad, but we'll have to figure out, have to pay attention to what other people are doing around the country with their seniors to help replicate those moments, as well as tie them into the fact that they're all going to show up at, college or work or whatever the rest of their lives. They're going to have some stories that they will not be alone, which again, hopefully we can be creative, but we're not alone in this. So.
Thank you. Frank?
Yeah, so I just want to, the comments were made earlier in the meeting, but I just wanted to thank Carrie Ann, Brian, and Ray for, in this time when everybody's got to be disconnected, we're really working hard to find ways to keep kids and families connected. We're an international school district. I mean, we've seen what's happened in Italy and China and France, and the latest stories out of the Wall Street Journal or the spread elsewhere. So I appreciate the check-ins that we're going to do with our students, and we have done and we will do. I think it's going to be really important as they're, struggling with families overseas and, with this, with all the circumstances swirling around. So I think it's so vital, and I'm glad to hear we're doing it. And I know we're figuring it out as we go, but it's such a key component in all the work we're doing right now. And I really appreciate, Ray, as you said, all of you have families, all of you are taking care and educating your students at the same time, just as all of our educators are. And so it's really a very selfless act to really kind of put the efforts you are into making sure that the meal program is coming off Alita. I mean, such a huge need for the community and so vital. So I just really appreciate you prioritizing and making this a top priority as you deal with all the other top priorities that you have in taking care of your own families. And so I just want to thank you for that. It's so important and it makes such a difference.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Frank. Anybody else? And I just want to also comment, Alita, it was really helpful to hear how many meals you were able to deliver and how it went up. And I know the coordination, and you opened up by saying that you were able to pay our employees, which is really important in a time when, you know, so many people feel so uncertain. So thank you for that. And just the effort that you put in even prior to actually closing, knowing that this might happen. So just thank you for that. So
1 second, I do have a final question. I'm sorry, I should have asked this earlier. It was in my notes, but I overlooked it. I know that in times where families are together, some families that are more unstable than others, those prone to domestic violence, can have an uptick in concerning incidents. And is there anyone who can speak to any outreach that's being done to the most vulnerable families that we think might be susceptible to some of that circumstantial sort of issue?
Well, I think I did the best that I could to kind of cover that sort of thing a little bit earlier with like I said, established existing relationships that families have with our staff have with students, to the extent that we know about situations like that. As new ones emerge specific to that topic, you know, we have, you know, domestic violence hotlines, we have community resources available for that. But step one would for us to become aware of it as a school, so that we can refer, you know, families or our students facing a reality like that to other personnel that can go and do home visits and that can, you know, get them to a shelter if need be, all of the necessary steps that normally happen in situations like that.
Thank you.
right, and Andrus too. I know.
Yeah, so Andrus has been a partner. They're still staying in touch with their caseload. You know, they're working as best they can to have both. I don't want to say they're having virtual, but I believe they are. But they're definitely connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being
So
invited to Peekskill, to their site. I think they have something going on in Peekskill with Andrus.
yeah.
Our social workers.
And our social workers are also keeping in touch with some of these families. We know some of our most vulnerable. They're looking at what we'll call tier 2 and tier 3 type families where they may need additional support, and they've been working with. So there's that level of, and we're just going to have all eyes and ears open, right? When teachers reach out and others start reaching out, we have to all be cognizant that we got to look for signals that, you know, we may need to respond in different ways.
All right, thank you.
It's a good point, though.
Okay. Any final thoughts before I take a motion to adjourn? Any final thoughts? Okay, I want to thank everybody for being on this call and doing our board meeting virtually. And we're expected by the next time we have this meeting to hopefully have it at least viewed live for our community, our public. So we're hoping for that. That's what we anticipate. And with that, I wish everybody well, and again for everything everybody's doing. I'd like to take a motion to adjourn our board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.